Even Donald Trump can't stand Pam Bondi. We've seen report after report showing that behind closed doors, he's been calling her weak, ineffective, and terrible at her job. And honestly, she proves him right every single day out in public. That's exactly why Trump is now melting down with an absolutely unhinged threat post, right as calls from his own party to fire Bondi are growing louder by the hour. But here's where it all gets interesting. The one person who's been driving both Trump and Bondi completely crazy over the Epstein files. That's Thomas Massie. Right after Bondi's disaster of a hearing yesterday, he had plenty to say about it. His comments helped fuel Republicans turning against Bondi, which in turn sent Trump into a full spiral. So let's start right here with what Massie said.
Well, I think we're making progress. We got them to admit they over-redacted 2 documents this week and that they have co-conspirators' names that they haven't released. The recourse, and I keep reminding the folks at DOJ this, is that the next Attorney General can bring charges against them for breaking the law. I think that's what's compelled them to produce 3 million documents, and now they're claiming that it's incompetence. Look, their defense today is incompetence for why they haven't given us all of the documents they should, why they have over-redacted in the case of co-conspirators, and why they failed to redact the names of the victims.
Can I just ask what it's like to have the victims inside of that room while you're doing all this?
I think it's helpful. I mean, they're the reason this bill got passed. People say, when will you be satisfied? I'll be satisfied when those victims are satisfied, the survivors who were here today. And until then, I'm going to, work my butt off trying to get the DOJ to comply with this law.
Can you give us any more context about why you believe that the 6 men that you guys have found in these unredacted files, why you believe that they're likely incriminated by what you found in the files? Like, is there other addendums, other pages that you're able to connect to the ones that you've been able to lift the redactions that have brought you to those conclusions, or where are you coming on?
That would be a question for the DOJ. Why did they have a list of 18 people with Maxwell and Epstein on it and 2 victims and then a bunch of people that so far seem random to me? And then why were they compelled to redact those men's names? But if we go to actual FBI documents that have titles on them, like the FBI document, the 3-page document that has Leslie Wexner listed as a co-conspirator, at the top of that document, it says child sex trafficking. Like, if you're the DOJ and wouldn't that be the first place you go when you inherit documents from a prior administration? By the way, that's a 2019 document when Bill Barr, I believe, was Attorney General. At least Trump was president. So and then she appealed to, oh, well, why didn't you ask Mary Garland?
If you want to get through to Republicans, you've got to speak their language. And Thomas Massie, he clearly gets that. He and Rowana have made themselves crystal clear. They're fully prepared to bring contempt of Congress charges against Pam Bondi. They'll do whatever it takes to hold her, Todd Blanche, and everyone else at the DOJ accountable for the crimes they've committed in covering up the Epstein files. And here's the thing. They're far from the only ones who are fed up. Republican influencers watched yesterday's disaster with Bondi unfold, and they've completely had it too. All of this mounting pressure from his own side, that's exactly what sent Trump spiraling into that unhinged post. MAGA names call for Bondi to resign after wild congressional meltdown. A flurry of conservative names turned on Pam Bondi after her viral meltdown in front of Congress. On Wednesday, the Attorney General was hauled before lawmakers on Capitol Hill to face a grilling for her botched handling of the Epstein files. What followed was a farce, with the 6-year-old lashing out at her Democratic foes with prepared insults at every turn, preferring to talk about Donald Trump's claimed economic success instead of Epstein's crimes. Kyle Rittenhouse, who was acquitted of murdering 2 people during a protest against police violence when he was just 17, wrote, "Pam Bondi needs to resign." Conservative radio host Eric Erickson, great name, said Bondi should quit or be fired. Referring to a clip of the AG ranting about stocks instead of answering a question, he wrote on Twitter, "When the Attorney General of the United States is asked why she has prosecuted no one related to Jeffrey Epstein, and this is her answer about the DAO, she should be fired or resign." Kyle Rittenhouse, who was acquitted of murdering 2 people during a protest against police violence when he was just 17, wrote, Pam Bondi needs to resign. Conservative radio host Eric Erickson, great name, said Bondi should quit or be fired. Referring to a clip of the AG ranting about stocks instead of answering a question, he wrote on Twitter, when the Attorney General of the United States is asked why she has prosecuted no one related to Jeffrey Epstein, and this is her answer about the DAO, she should be fired or resign. Tim Pool, a prominent pro-Donald Trump commentator and podcaster, also broke from Bondi during an episode of Timcast posted to YouTube. He declared, "Man, we are a nation of adult children." Even conservative influencers can't defend Pam Bondi at this point, and that's probably exactly why Trump completely spiraled out of control and ran straight to Truth Social, horrified by Bondi's performance and absolutely furious at Thomas Massie and every other right-winger calling him out. So what did he post? This complete and total tantrum. Donald Trump wrote in a lengthy Truth Social post, quite frankly, AG Pam Bondi, under intense fire from the Trump deranged radical left lunatics, was fantastic at yesterday's hearing on the never-ending saga of Jeffrey Epstein, where the one thing that has been proven conclusively, much to their chagrin. Donald Trump definitely didn't write this. I don't think he knows the word chagrin. Was that President Donald J. Trump, now I'm speaking in the third person, okay, has been 100% exonerated of their ridiculous Russia type charges. Actually, it is the slimeball Democrats, many of them big donors and politicians, that have been proven guilty. Oh, so there's crimes. Maybe we should prosecute those. The Republican loser, sanctimonious Reno Congressman Thomas Massie, made a total fool of himself yesterday, fighting aimlessly against a hopeless agenda of hate and stupidity, as most clearly stated by his crashing job approval numbers in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, where a military hero opponent is crushing him in the polls, shouting out Ed Gallerin. He is now in the wacky Liz Cheney territory. Quite frankly, nobody cared about Epstein when he was alive, except for Donald Trump, who was his best friend of a decade. They only cared about him when they thought he could create political harm to a very popular president who has brought our country back from the brink of extinction, and very quickly at that. Trump continued, "Oh my gosh. In fact, quite frankly, this attempt by the Democrats to take away attention from tremendous Republican success is backfiring badly. Maybe they should focus on their quest to open our borders to the world's greatest criminals, have transgender for everybody, or get men, no matter their size or strength, their size, to play in women's sports. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I don't know what matter, but President Donald J. Trump. Trump keeps making the same mistake over and over. He says there's nothing in the Epstein files. Move on. Nobody cares. But then, in the same breath, he claims Democrats are guilty of crimes. Yet somehow we're not prosecuting anyone because we can't talk about it. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, Bondi was clearly playing to an audience of one yesterday. That's why she kept going on about the Dow. The Dow hit 50,000. The Dow. Cool, Pam. Here's the thing. The wealthiest 10% of American households own 93% of the stock market. So yeah, the top 10% are thrilled. Great job. But the rest of the country watching prices skyrocket on everything they buy? They couldn't care less about the Dow. So thanks for that meltdown, Pam. Really appreciate it. She was trying to channel Trump's talking points, but here's her problem. She's not Trump. She just looked and sounded ridiculous. Now look, Trump looks ridiculous too, but when he deflects and goes off on his crazy weaves, he's dealing with a press corps that won't hold his feet to the fire. That's not what happens when cabinet members sit before Congress. Bondi is not built to deflect, scream, and distract when she's sitting across from trained lawyers and seasoned members of Congress. These people know how to grill witnesses in hearings. Bondi has no idea how to respond. That's why she's facing calls to resign. That's why people want her fired. And sure, Trump will never publicly admit she was a disaster. But we all saw it. It was obvious. And behind closed doors, he's telling her she looks weak. Yesterday, she looked really weak. She actually brought note cards with pre-written insults and the search histories of members of Congress who visited the DOJ to view the Epstein files. That is absolutely insane. Jamie Raskin called her out for it yesterday, and he's still calling out Bondi's failures in this clip right here.
Well, the central problem is whether we were talking about the Epstein file, which was the source of a lot of questions, or the massive violation of civil rights and civil liberties taking place in Minneapolis and across the country, or a number of other areas. She constantly sided with the perpetrators against the victims. And so there were survivors of Epstein's, the international child sex trafficking ring in the room yesterday, and a number of my colleagues challenged Bondi to apologize to them for failing to redact their names and releasing and publishing to the world their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, in some cases nude images from them when they were younger. She refused to apologize. She began to attack Ms. Jayapal. She attacked Mr. Nadler. She attacked most of the members of the committee. She arrived with a burn book of insults about members and about their districts that she wanted to lob at everyone. And we were ready for that because we had played the game tapes from her over in the Senate, and we were astonished that she was, rather than answering questions, completely dodging the substance and attacking the members. And so we just said simply to Chairman Jordan, she can do it, but not on our time. We're not going to accept that. Stop the clock, and you can let her filibuster in her way. But I think the whole country got to see what extraordinary disrespect the Attorney General of the United States of America has for the rule of law. We basically have one rule in that committee, and she violated it for the entire day.
I mean, for some reason, this woman let these victims, she turned her nose up to them, victims of repeated sexual abuse, even at times when they were children. She refused to even recognize these victims when they stood up and raised their hands. It is truly, for me,
with direct.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was confronted with direct evidence of crimes that we showed her. For example, with Prince Andrew, there was photographic evidence of him perched over a young girl, and she just repeatedly refused to accept the reality of any of the evidence of crimes. There are hundreds or thousands of crimes that are perfectly readily identifiable in all of the information they've put out, and even more in the information, the 3 million documents they're withholding. But she refuses to acknowledge that or recognize it, and that's why I started off by saying she is perpetrating from the Department of Justice a massive cover-up of the Epstein conspiracy and all of these other co-conspirators who are out there. And she was repeatedly asked, are you investigating the other co-conspirators? Have you indicted any of them? And the answer was no. She essentially killed the investigation.
Here's the thing. We should all be way more outraged about Pam Bondi spying on American citizens, especially members of Congress. Let's not just brush past the fact that we're watching a Big Brother state unfold in real time. Think about this. They've put more energy into surveilling Democratic members of Congress, trying to hold Epstein accountable, than they have into actually combing through those Epstein files to prosecute anyone. Let that sink in. But here's why I do what I do. We need to make sure everyone sees just how catastrophic that hearing was and the complete meltdowns Republicans are having right now. That's exactly why I started this channel, because we need more clips exposing these moments, flooding the algorithm, more clips of Democrats actually fighting back against Donald Trump, getting in front of people. If you want to help make that happen, hit that subscribe button for National Affairs Media right now. It's the single best way to support what we're building here. If this video fired you up, drop a blue heart in the comments and let me know you're with us. Keep fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. I'm Jack Whitmore, and until next time, I'll see you.